In his poem, After the Matinee, Bill writes, "Is there one place I can go that always lifts my heart? Yes." Since that poem appears in his latest book, The Luminous Race Track, in which most of the verses are set in Southbridge, we can guess where that one place might be. With that in mind, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be part of this homecoming for an author of, by my count, 9 poetry books previously published and 1 novel titled The June Rise. Bill has also written screenplays and the libretto of an operatic musical. I won't take time listing the prestigious grants he has received nor the awards that his books have won. Please check the internet for details. However, it's definitely worth noting that in addition to Bill's creative writing, he has had a distinguished career, both as a longtime editor of Colorado Review and as an educator, receiving the John F. Stern Distinguished Professor Award for his 30 years teaching in and directing the MFA in Creative Writing program at Colorado State University. But back to Southbridge, where, quote, vesper bells mingle with factory horns, end quote. This setting, this place, has appeared elsewhere in Bill's books, most notably in Duhamel. In many of the scenes described in The Luminous Race Track, we watch a boy grapple with a grown-up world of working-class realities he only partially understands and cannot control. As early as the 2nd grade, there are confusing lessons to learn in parochial school. Things are expected of us, but we mustn't expect anything. More than once, the speaker of these poems retreats to the banks of the Quinnebog. Beside a quiet pool below the falls, I see myself casting a silk line, scanning birch groves for a soul that lives unchurched, alone with a river that makes a song of gravity. Widening his sphere of exploration, he first pedals his bike up Page Hill and then walks it up Clements Hill because with a bike I can go anywhere and be back for supper. I won't provide spoilers, but this kid has some pretty revelatory experiences up on those hills. Check them out. What I admire most about Bill Tremblay's work is his restlessly inventive quest to make meaning out of experience and song out of gravity, wherever he finds himself, in reality or in his imagination, be it fishing in a Central Mass mill town, sitting in a Mexican bar, drawing his dagger in a snowy Colorado camp, or taking frequent hikes along a reservoir in view of the Rocky Mountains. I'm glad to have him guide my mind's eye wherever his focus turns, and I'm sure that any of you unfamiliar with his poetry will enjoy a similar pleasure this evening.
My name is Bill Tremblay. I was born in Southbridge at the Harrington Memorial Hospital. I went to St. Mary's Parochial School for 8 years, and then Mary E. Wells High School, which I graduated from in the spring of 1957. I really loved this town, and I spent a lot of time in this beautiful library. I'm going to read this poem, the opening poem of the book, called The Quinnebog at 12. From the Central Street Bridge, willows still line both banks, arching their shoots over the river, thicker than when I was 12 and spent my time after school working my way through thickets upstream toward red brick textile mills. Rhythms of loom and shuttle became my heartbeat. Men, women, changing bobbins, weaving miles of cotton fabric before the factories closed, before the town turned to rust. Still, the river rises from glacial springs I search for in dreams as the wobbling earth makes seasons, melting snow, rising sap of maples, roar of rushing waters. Beside a quiet pool below the falls, I see myself casting a silk line, scanning birch groves for a soul that lives unchurched, alone with a river that makes a song of gravity as waters dash on granite blocks. Its fish live in a house that moves. A seagull shrieks above the falls. What is it doing so far inland? The boy I was would see it as the paraclete, come to help John baptize in the River Jordan. The boy's hook strikes something heavy beneath swirls of foam. What he reels in is the prophet's robes. How many decades has it been since I first stood inside the water's thunder and winds that shake the oak leaves and rains that make waters rush past delicate ferns and Queen Anne's lace? What was the river to me then? My teacher? My refuge? And why did I need one? It didn't judge or threaten me. All it asked was my attention to what changes and what does not. I could trace the river in my mind, its arm reaching Long Island, around the Cape of Good Hope, to a wider world, and back to where the river splits its tongue and an island appears where I planted the seeds of my second birth. So you can see, I'm talking about the summer of 1952. It's the height of the Korean War. And as I imagine myself back there, I realized that what I was opening myself up to was the possibility of using all those 8 years of parochial school. And I'm sure you must realize by now that I was really never accused of being humble. I mean, right, I'm fishing and what do I catch? No less than John the Baptist, right? What am I doing, you know? Recently, I tried to get a picture. The foliage, like I parked and I walked onto the Central Street Bridge and I looked sort of northwest, I suppose. The foliage has just completely blocked any view of the river. Back when I was a kid, like 1952, there was a straight shot. You could see all the way to the Ames worsted textile mills, you know? And that was part of it for me, you know? It was like I had certain realizations, like there wouldn't be a Southbridge if there wasn't this river, you know, because it drove wheels. It provided power for, you know, the shuttles, you know? And I love the sound of the shuttles. What I'd like to do at this juncture is to share with you some of the quotations that I have in this book. Here's one from Victor Hugo. He says in Les Miserables, "If a soul is left in darkness, sins will be committed. The guilty one is not he who commits the sin, but he who causes it." And this is from the Gospel according to Thomas, which I didn't read in the 8th grade because it hadn't been discovered yet. But I think it didn't, I don't think it would have made the cut at the Nicene conclave. And it goes like this. One of his disciples said to Jesus, "The kingdom of heaven. You always speak of this kingdom of heaven. But where shall we find this heaven of yours?" Jesus answered, "It is not something you can say, here or there. Rather, it is all around us, and we do not see it." And that was an eye-opener for me. In one of the books that I left at the library here, I dedicated it to the people of Southbridge. And I said in my hen scratch, to the people of Southbridge, this was my paradise. I am now going to read from the next one. Going back to a poem called Creation from a book called Duhamel, Ideas of Order in Little Canada. Creation. In school, the nuns taught God made the heavens and earth in 6 days. Duhamel never believed it. He saw his mother and father make it in 1 day. At first, it was dark. His mother spread the curtains and made light shine through the glass windows and the wooden crossbars, making their children, the shadows. His mother carried him and created the kitchen, bathroom, talcum, pleasure, made the air the smell of hot toast. His father walked him with both hands and created doors, the world outside, angel clouds, and telephone wires above streets were how things are connected. He created motion in a maroon Packard and colors for go, stop, and maybe. They created smokestacks, steeples, and silos to mark the different kinds of work. They created Revere Beach, and for everything without end, the Atlantic, with waves rushing toward him saying, "Reverse, everything in reverse." Darkness came, light in reverse. Shouting came, laughter in reverse. Duhamel created more uses for darkness. The pleasures of making the world over. Bathrobe sky, melted tar night, Packard wind. He hummed as his eyes opened in reverse. Made you think, didn't I? A lot of my poems are based on jazz. And I was a big fan of jazz in high school. And it really paid off for me, because when I used to go to Fontana's music store on Elm Street near the Strand Theater, Mrs. Fontana used to let me listen to records free. And so I loved the albums that, the early albums in the 50s that Jerry Mulligan and Chet Baker did together, you know. And so when I was introduced to Cynthia on the second floor of the Clark building at Clark University, one January afternoon after an American Lit class, we went over to the student union and had coffees, and I found someone else who loved Chet Baker. It was amazing. And she also liked Hart Crane. You know, we were in this poetry class together, and we were the only ones that liked Hart Crane, you know? They all said, oh, too difficult, you know? But we didn't find it difficult. We just loved it, you know? And this is Écoutez. And it's about sounds. When I was a kid. A piano minuet echoes in town hall rafters as school kids make bridges with arms, singing, "Blackbird, blackbird, in and out my window." Ducking, weaving with swept back wings, rehearsing for a talent show that night. Some sounds soothe, some shock like a hawk's shriek, some rumble below human hearing, a caterpillar inching cracks in sidewalks. Vesper bells mingle with factory horns, men in Elmer Fudd hats, women in overcoats, all in galoshes slush home. Sleet stings their faces, the travail of Adam's curse. Aunt Lil says, "Écoutez et apprenez." I know that sound. I like its waltzing rhythm. She says jokes in French aren't funny in English. Summers, the Iceman clomps up triple-decker staircases in his orange rubber cape, tongs chunked in a block. Madame Leblanc, in flowered house dress, opens the door with a "Comment ça va, Georges?" Vegetable men charge down Wardwell Court in a pickup, singing their obligato. Tomatoes, potatoes, cucumbers, ripe, juicy melons, straight from the vine. Sound pictures. The 4-act saga of snow, rain, wind, ice as clouds roll back curtains of factory smoke. Dizzy's father is drunk again, slips on salt sand. His wife married a child, and now she must put him to bed. Fishmen appear from stinging ocean swells with tuna from the outer banks. On the radio, a woman sings, "See the pyramids along the Nile." Car brakes screech. A dog whimpers. People on Central Street hold their breath. Sound, the death of silence, silence, the birth of sound. And in that womb, my mother and father speak French to keep their secrets. I agree. I don't want to know. A woman sings, Allez-vous-en, allez-vous-en, on my mother's Victrola. English is my mother tongue, the life raft I cling to. If paradise is our true home, qu'est-ce que c'est, mon petit? Qu'est-ce que c'est? What is this? Which goes back to that thing about paradise. Darkness also comes. Heartwood. Ma knocks on the front door, which rhymes with bonjour. She grips my hand hard so I won't run. My head is full of radio noise. Guadalcanal, Saipan, New Guinea. She walks down Lens Street to the optical plant where she makes funny green goggles for the Army Air Corps. The woman marches me through parlor, kitchen, back porch. Broken glass glitters in gravel driveways, stars visible in daylight, a picket fence with pink hollyhocks, a silver garage, chickens peck and gluck and squabble. Hours, hours. Sun sails into dark hemlocks. I stare at a set of snow tires piled off-kilter. They spiral into a shadow with fangs that swallows me down a pitch-black throat where acids burn my eyelids. Were those mosquitoes buzzing or a squadron of B-17s? Late afternoon, sunlight through elm leaves, grass, stones, animals, wood, metal-tasting mixtures of air, the sun to cook them. Only some are alive, like my Uncle Bill's muddy work boots drying on the porch. Was I named after him? I hear Wilhelmina say, Bienvenue. Hand in hand, my mother and me, we walk up the hill to the woodlot. A man in overalls cuts logs with an electric saw. Its blade zings through heartwood. I stop, turn to my mother, wrest my wrist from her fingers. Don't leave me at Wilhelmina's anymore. I have to work. Your father. She stops. Buzzsaw through heartwood. Something is wrong with my eyes. Flocks of clouds fly west. She retakes my hand. We step over silver railroad tracks, up the dirt path to our three-decker. Tomorrow is Saturday. I will tie tomato vines to stakes in the Victory Garden. From my bedroom, I hear something's wrong in the kitchen. A gasping, like someone running to catch a bus. Just as a little note, the funny green goggles that she was working on, they had a spindle at the bridge of the nose. And this is in the book also, but like maybe, I don't know, August 10th, 1945, I'm swinging on the porch, and my mother comes out with the Worcester Telegram, and it's got a picture of the atomic bomb, Hiroshima. And she tells me, she said, you know those funny goggles? I said, yeah. She says, I read here, the airmen used those goggles so they wouldn't go blind from the flash. So she said, they'll never forgive us. This one's called the Luminous Race Track. Some evenings, he says with his smoky voice, you can see Lady Luck's face shining through Narragansett Park's red maples. Even a truck driver can feel the glint of sunset flicker with promise. Road grime washes from the soul. He says, the racing form plots the many rosaries of a horse's life story. But that's just cranking sausages. A thoroughbred is a beast of light burden if its jockey is only 5 feet tall. Try as we might to figure the angles, lifting our chins for a random kiss or a slapped face from the lady in the sky is the only real gamble. He takes a long drag on his Pall Mall, feeling what's in the hearts of horses in magic. Stroll through the paddock before each race. Watch how they swish their tails. Horses can have butterflies. Horses can trash talk just like us humans. Horses can be cranky, bored even. The inside dope goes in just beneath the saddle. The trick is to divide furlongs into seconds so the winning horse will prick up its ears. Circle the name with a wet pencil. Some nights we hit the daily double. We play with the racetrack's money, but we must take care not to get too cocky. That opens us up to racetrack touts who slip between bales of Timothy and snag us by the lapels, saying, the fix is in. Our old man's eyes spin off sparks. My brothers, my sister, and I, we love our old man's stories. We see him speeding to the ticket counter. Chasing the dream leaves him feverish. Having a luminous racetrack inside him is a flame too great to bear. His heart leaves his brain slipping in mud. His horse's heart gives out on the home stretch. Midnight comes in a confetti of ripped up tickets. We are left with a parable of swamp gas as he rolls, broke but smiling, a thing of light in a fog so thick, it's a miracle he makes it home at all. So in the previous poem, my mother said, I have to work. Your father okay? When I was talking to Chris Howell, my publisher, about what should be on the cover, he couldn't find anything he liked. And I said, well, why don't you get one of those NASA photographs of the Milky Way? Seen from space. That's the Luminous Race Track, right? But it's also the American dream. How we're all running that race, trying to make it, Gotta make it. Anyway, I'm explaining, sorry. But I'm a teacher. I'm going to read poems about my brother Jerry, who was a trumpet player, played for the high school band here, and perhaps about my sister Nancy, who was, I think she had a job at the Southbridge Savings Bank before she joined the Navy. Yeah. This is called Jerry, my brother Jerry, who's a trumpet player. Jerry and the Sacrament of Music. Thursday night, shopping night, Jerry drifts on a sinuous cloud of hot buttered popcorn, wafting from the five and dime. He's a teenage shambling gawker, maundering up Main Street, a lover of crowds and sidewalk bazaars. Like a cartoon cat lifted off his feet by a can of tuna opening, a ribbon of sound draws him upstairs to the Circle Canadian Hall. A drum and bugle corps rehearses a Sousa march. The band leader hears him in the stairwell humming the Stars and Stripes Forever and hands him a horn. The guys in the band take 5 as he puts the mouthpiece to his lips. His cheeks bulge like Gabriel, and out comes one clear note, a home run on his first at bat. The way Saul became Paul on the road to Tarsus, Jerry is changed. He plays "Oh Happy Day" over and over until sunlight spills from him and the earth becomes the only planet of music in the Milky Way. His mission now is to find the right tone for every note, to turn the scales like a robin on stick feet, to spiral in a brass communion with his friends on the diamond-studded staircase of Dixie as they play South Rampart Street Parade, shuffling on the neat little rhythm of happy dancing feet. That's actually lyrics from the song. When I look at the sheet music, all I see is dots, like crows on a rail fence. When I tell him how happy I am for him, he looks at me over the bell of his horn. I have notes, he says. You have words. When you get the urge to write, ask yourself if what you write has a heart. Does it know how changed tones make changed feelings? Does it have the lungs to carry them the whole way? He finds all that in his horn, a threshold to the universe within, a glory hallelujah ready to begin. Stephen mentioned how confused I was as a boy about Catholic doctrine. This is a poem about 3 big words I learned in the 6th grade. Omniscience, omnipotence, and ubiquity. Okay? So this is called the outward manifestation. That was a phrase that the nuns used all the time. The outward manifestation. In other words, what they were talking about is a state of grace. Right? What is the outward manifestation of a state of inward grace? Riverside birch groves yield one tree thick enough with bark to make a model canoe. I was a Boy Scout. A sudden breeze sets leaves a-quiver. God's hand pushes the air that harrows the land with tines of water. The Holy Spirit at the velocity of the visible. God's hands strum balalaikas, making trees dance like gypsies. He sets the stars with cosmic timers. Rings of light sweep across the heavens to become violets, irises, roses, weeds, men, women, dreams of swimming slow between galaxies. He makes the sleep of snow in rock caves with bears and snakes and foxes breathing like teapots, steaming. The birch tree sways beside the God-driven river, so lovely it makes the tree frogs sing. God is the birch tree. the rosewood-handled paring knife I take from my mother's pantry, and the birch bark I steal from the tree, using my left hand to steady myself. How to keep from getting all mixed up. The knife slips through the papery bark, slicks my finger to the bone, the blood well filling, dripping. Who or what is the cause? What is there that is not God? Knock on a stranger's door. An angel in a housecoat answers. She sticks the hand under the faucet. Blood blurs and swirls down the drain. She wraps the finger with gauze, commands me to get stitches in a doctor's office, paneled in birch. As I walk, drops of blood spatter on the sidewalk, like notes I've been taking on how God does it all. Billions of decisions per second. Perhaps it's loss of blood that makes me hear the galaxy's call, the camel with the wrinkled knees. Away, 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 into the only verb God is. So I was kind of a mystic, I think, when I was a boy. And then I went to college. And I started reading Rousseau and so on and so forth. This is a poem for a change of pace called Cabbage Night. I don't know if you guys, did you guys have Cabbage Night? In my neighborhood down Wardwell Court, which is like you could throw a rock and there it is, we loved Halloween so much we had 2 nights of it. So Cabbage Night was the night before Halloween. So again, this is music, I think. I want it to be. Old Lady Gardino jumped up from her rocker at the thump on her piazza. It was the night before Halloween. The neighborhood kids whined till their parents let them run loose in a pack. They swarmed the garden fences. Knick-knack, break the witch's back, they chanted. She was marked with a twisted right foot, the sign of the goat. Her high-heeled boot, pure lead. She was the palsy in grandfather's hands, the pink slip in father's pay envelope. Into the rows they spilled, through dry corn stalks like a starveling drill corps, standing at attention to a white full moon. They tore out the cabbages, running through empty squash vines to the walkway between the Fong house and Old Lady Gardino's. They lofted the cabbages over her banister, weaving like Apaches in a figure 8, crying, "Human heads, human heads." She ran out, pouring a basin of scalding water over the railing. Ghosts of steam sprang up from wet angles, steps, the hood of a Ford parked in the alley. "You're all in my power," she cried. "Go, bring me more cabbage hearts. Fly." The kids stopped in their tracks. Should they do as a witch had commanded? First one child, then the whole gang broke into a walk toward their 3-deckers. A chill crackled into the air, shooing them along. Hot cider, if they were lucky. If they were lucky, no screeching dragon clawing their hair as they tried to run, feet stuck in sidewalks soft as fresh bread. Old Lady Gardino stepped back out on her piazza, gathering cabbages into her apron. Good soup, she said to herself, the last words before dawn. This is a poem, and I hope I won't embarrass anybody. It's called Nancy, my sister named Nancy. Nancy with the laughing face. Frank Sinatra, back in like 1947, got married to a girl named Nancy, and this is a song that he sang and catapulted him to the Paramount Theater. I can hear her sloshing in the bath. The phone rings. Ma yells, "It's your boyfriend." She bursts out, still wrapping herself in a towel. She sees me stunned by her likeness to Venus. As she passes, she slaps my face softly. She's engaged. A phonograph shows them on a golf tee. He's pretending to give her a lesson. A handsome man from a Greek family. I'm too young to know. Greek grandmothers in black dresses sit at tables as their grandchildren dance, drink thimbles of raki, and arrange marriages. My sister is too. She and her fiancé take me to a movie set in an Arctic radar station. The theremin makes our skin crawl. A thermite bomb sinks the flying saucer to black depths inside us. Flyers, technicians, a doctor, an engineer, and a girl. There always has to be a girl. And I know why. They find a creature in the ice. The thing comes alive. The men try to burn it. It bursts out, shredding sheets of fire. This is getting serious. I crouch behind the seat in front of me. It doesn't die. They find a sled dog hanging upside down like a bottle of plasma, feeding alien seedlings. The men hatch a plan to kill it. They don't say what. In movies, they keep us hanging upside down. The thing hammers the metal door, and there it is. I see Nancy's hair fly up. We have crossed the permafrost of fear. The Russians have the atomic bomb. We have seen enough of war to know not all monsters come from outer space. That was not the worst shock. Her boyfriend's parents say no when he says he wants to marry her. He should marry his own kind. She disappears. My dad tells me she's joined the waves. Even when she gets old, there are moments when her eyes have a faraway look. She's as strong as her three brothers. She's one who's let herself feel it all and just kept dancing. I can still see her jitterbugging on the Strip in Vegas that night of the Elvis impersonators. She's the one who used to tell me, make a muscle. The one who could see the Superman inside the ugly duckling. The one who played Teach Your Children Well on her 8-track in her Thunderbird and squeezed my hand as if it were still the 60s. This is for you. The one who remembered all the parts I've left out. The one who told me there's no point in beating a dead horse. I could have gone to St. Mary's High School and been among maybe 4 or 5 people in the class, but I wanted to play football. Yes, I know. I was a good high school football player, and made all county. It was part of my plan to just check out of the Catholic thing and go to the public high school, and the football would be my ticket to the social scene, you know? I knew one thing, nobody would pick a fight with me, right? Because of the assumptions and so on and so forth. So, at any rate, yeah. This is called My Father Drives Me to Amherst. It's a lot of stuff that I didn't write about.
Yeah.
And suffice it to say that he and my brother Ray and my brother Jerry came to a football game northwest of here on Dresser Hill, or on top of it. And I came off the field, the game, we had won. And my father was standing there, and I was in my cleats. And I stood above, I was taller than him, wearing cleats. And my father said, "You were good." And I said, "Too late, Dad." Yeah, right. My father drives me to Amherst. He knows the poet recited verse at Kennedy's inauguration, but only asks how much he got paid. Or was it like every time a working stiff gets screwed, pour l'honneur? This from a man who dreams of getting rich betting on horses. I try to explain what the poet's job is: to quarrel with God, to praise the dead, and put them in poems with their families, whether the families want them or not. The poet is famous for saying, home is where, when you have to go there, they have to take you in. Do you think you can live on what you imagine? My father teases as he masters the road between West Brookfield and Ware. I sit beside him like a one-legged sparrow as we drive through budding spring woods. At last, we enter the campus. I slip into the back row and listen. The poet brushes off his critics like snow fallen on his shoulders. A death wish, he chuckles. By now you know who he is, right? Who the poet is. He doesn't count the decades of ice, the bitten prayers, the sudden blood of saw blades run amok, blizzards of crumpled paper filling his wastebasket, candles snuffed at dawn, another daze so dazzling his eyes sing red. He recites a poem about a brook with boulders that fling white waters back to their source. It's the closest he gets to God. For my father, it's when he hits the daily double. I don't wonder what the poet means by bringing sleeves of ice into the iambic sway of girls with their hair thrown forward in the shattering of a crystal January. I see my father with new eyes, standing beside the student union, smoking a Pall Mall, reading horses' names in the racing form, in a slant of evening light. He looks studious in his tweed jacket and gabardine shirt, like an old scholar at a university park in Quebec. But no, he's an American now, trying to figure a way to make an extra buck. He lives by the motto, it takes money to make money, and can't wait for the racing season to begin. In other words, I kind of, here's a Southbridge poem. It's called Duhamel and Ledoux at the Bar, 20 minutes to closing. This is from Duhamel, obviously. Fat chance I'm going to try and sound like I'm drunk, okay? Not that I didn't. Fat chance I had, Ledoux sputtered, head between his arms, a Pall Mall coiling white. I says, is it some other guy? I figure I'll work harder for her than anyone. I'm going to be the bride of Christ, she says. My breath flew out of my mouth. How am I going to compete with that? I can't change no water into wine. I gotta pay, like all the other suckers. When she came back from the convent, I'd see her walk down Hook Street near the California Fruit Company loading dock. My chest would start thumping. Sister of mercy, she was more beautiful under the veil. She looked right through me, from another world, I guess. Ledoux stuck a shot glass in his right eye. She looked right through me, he said again. Duhamel smiled. Show her the knife in your back, Ledoux. Show her the blisters in your hands and feet. Be bold. When the Montreal Express comes cutting through your rented room like a huge refrigerator on wheels, say, this world is blessed. This kidney stone I pass is a relic. A little razor. It gives visions. A night in jail can make a blind man see. The birds of morning can heat your coffee, can get you to work on time. The dead flies on your windowsill, though they perish, yet shall they live again. Ledoux, cross-eyed, stabbed a calloused finger at Duhamel's shirt. You were making fun of me, Duhamel said. Duhamel saw Ledoux's lower lip quiver. Come on, he said. Enough is enough. One of the important moments of my life was at Mattresses Cafe. And I was talking to some guys from the Knights of Columbus. And they wanted to talk football with me. Well, actually, the conversation came around and somebody used the expression dumb Canuck. I said, that's prejudice. And they were trying to buck me up in a way, And the more they talked, the more I realized what kind of guys they were. They were guys that were working tough factory jobs. And they were managing to put away money for their kids. I mean, on top of everything, that they were thinking of the future of their children. And I think in a way, it made me somebody who always respected the working class. You know? I mean, even though my talents were not something I could be employed using in a town like Southbridge, I had to go out, you know. But there was a part of me that was always Southbridge. This is from Walks Along the Ditch. It's called The Moment You Hold It. Smoke spirals from chimneys across the ditch. The air carries its woody smell down the hill to other houses where small lights shine in the windows of an aging couple learning from the radio that a good story is one of life's most enduring pleasures. And over the frozen pond, the wind shapes snowdrifts into angel harps that have fallen from a clear sky where a half moon lands between Venus and Orion, the place Egyptians believed was the soul's true home. At the edge of a ruined city, two soldiers share a cigarette in an alleyway, waiting for their patrol to catch up. As yet, the night is quiet. No wind stirs the sycamore. Not a child is crying. No dogs are barking. This is peace, for as long as you can hold it. You know, that sometimes when we're very, very lucky, and I've been lucky a lot, we can see the heaven that's within someone. And that's love. You know? That's what we love about them, is the heaven within them.